Hi there, and thank you for watching. This will be part 1 of what I would like to become a series of videos on the topic of Satanism, where we'll dive into just what Satanism is, its known origins, ideologies, practitioners, how it has affected history, and how it still affects the world today. I plan to go into everything from religious and political institutions, secret societies, cults, government, the entertainment industry, to technology, including artificial intelligence, and Satanism's influence within all of these realms. But hold on, before you dismiss this as just another conspiracy video, please keep an open mind as I plan to take a look at all these topics using documented facts in order to build a foundation of understanding to show you how I've come to the conclusions I have in my own research. Your own mileage and conclusions may vary, but if you never bother to look, you can never hope to understand. It's also important to understand that this is not coming from any religious perspective or belief system, but rather an honest search for understanding and truth. In fact, your own religious beliefs or lack thereof will have no bearing on your ability to understand these concepts. If you notice the title of the video is An Incomplete History of Satanism, that's for a very good reason. One person could not possibly compile a comprehensive documentation of all the elements involved here and trace them back throughout history, though many have already provided great and impressive bodies of work in this regard. My goal here is to include enough information to at least begin to put together pieces of this great puzzle and encourage others to look deeper into some of these topics. For some seasoned researchers, much of this may only be surface level knowledge, but I hope to dive deep enough that everyone can gain at least some bit of insight. Also keep in mind that some of these topics are very controversial, and we have different schools of thought or interpretations for the information on record that is out there. As such, consider this body of work as my own conclusions and interpretations, and do not consider anything as absolute truth until you have looked into it for yourself and formed your own conclusions. This is how you should treat every bit of information, even information coming from a source you consider official and trustworthy. Healthy skepticism, both for new information and for your own pre-existing beliefs, is an absolute must. Though I do have my own opinions on these matters, as we all do, I intend to be as objective as I can in the delivery of this information and differentiate speculation from accepted fact. And though I will insert my own opinions and commentary here and there, not only to help illustrate how I've come to the conclusions that I have, but also to make this more personable and less robotic, I will not knowingly make any false claims or misrepresent the information presented in any way. Again, I'm only interested in broadening my own understanding as well as the understanding of others and getting closer to the real truth. So, if you're willing to embark on this arduous journey with me, let's begin. The term Satan, meaning accuser, opposer, or adversary, first appeared in the Bible as a term describing defiance, and then in the book of Job as the name of an accusing angel. In the book of Enoch, the name described a member of the Watchers, a group of fallen angels. Satan was later established as a nemesis of Jesus in the New Testament and the ultimate evil. In the 17th century, he was recast as an admirable rebel anti-hero who defied God's authoritarianism. Eliphas Levi describes him as the horned goat deity Baphomet. Satan has appeared in many forms throughout history and the modern day, and his concept was likely influenced by other religious figures, which we'll also be exploring more in depth in this video. But just what is Satanism? It's a term that can have different meanings to different people, as you'll see. The terms Satanism and Satanist can be traced back to the 1560s, used as a way of describing someone with a satanic disposition. Protestants were labeled Satanists by the Roman Catholic Church, saying their beliefs aligned with Satan's plan for the world. The Protestants would retaliate by making the same claim about the Catholics. Satanism was also used by peasants as a way of rebelling against the ruling class and was considered anti-establishment. elites would practice Satanism as well for their own form of rebellion. But is it just simply the act of worshiping the devil instead of God? Although there's no doubt this does go on, it's really more about ideology. And as I hope to demonstrate, it's one that predates the name Satan or even the Bible. By its practitioners today, it has been said to most commonly be referred to simply as the old religion, and some believe it is in fact mankind's oldest religion. So although we will continue to use Satanism as a blanket term for our purposes, it may be better described as the dark occult. To those unfamiliar with its meaning, the term occult simply means hidden. There is no positive or negative connotation attached to the word itself, which is why we differentiate by using the term dark occult, meaning occulted or hidden knowledge used for negative purposes. While this may drum up images of evil sorcerers from movies or books, it's really more about an understanding of the self, the laws of nature, and human psychology. This is not to say that there are not practitioners that do believe in the supernatural elements involved, and we'll touch on those aspects as well. But for now, it's important to understand how simply obtaining the knowledge of how the world works and just what makes humans tick would be enough to give someone a huge advantage over others. We can also define Satanism as practices that violate natural law. I must point out that many are under the mistaken assumption that natural law simply means the law of the jungle or survival of the fittest, and this could not be further from the truth. There is much information out there about natural law, and you can check out my video titled A Challenge to My Left and Right Wing Friends for a primer on the topic, where I also recommend other resources, especially Mark Passio's full seminar on natural law. In order to keep moving along, however, think of natural law as a law of correspondence, where more immorality, meaning transgressions against others, leads to increased levels of tyranny for mankind as a whole. You could also think of it like the golden rule or karma. Satanists, which you will begin to see as we progress, do not act in accordance with these principles. In a later video, we'll take a deeper look at the ideologies behind these practices of the dark occult, but for now, just simply think of it in terms of knowledge used for purely selfish purposes, without regard to how it affects others. To really understand the psychology behind these practices, we need to look back through history at known belief systems to find similarities and parallels. We'll start by examining some religious figures throughout history that may have inspired or are in some way related to the archetype or idea of Satan. Pretty much every religion has had some character who in some way relates to Satan or shares some common element. Deities included in this list are not necessarily all negative in essence. For example, many of the gods of the underworld are called such as they are considered to be related to the earth, one of the 5 elements, or in some cases death and a peaceful transition to the afterlife. It really comes down to the manner in which these entities are viewed by the individual or how adherents to a particular spiritual belief recognize them. If you weren't already aware, you'll soon see how many of the names of deities have changed from culture to culture or even within cultures, and you'll see the same names popping up frequently. Many of the ancient gods and goddesses seem to be almost interchangeable, with the same or similar figures being represented by different names within different cultures and religions, so it becomes a large undertaking to establish any definitive story or origin for many of these figures. The goal here is to show parallels, possible connections, sources of inspiration, and just gain an understanding of different mindsets as they relate to mythology, religion, and spirituality. This isn't about pinning one deity or belief system as the culprit or placing blame anywhere, because as you'll also see later on, there are people who participate in satanic practices all over the world, both religious and non-religious. Some deities, in fact, although otherwise considered positive or neutral, may be included here simply due to the etymology of their name or connections with other deities. As we move through this list, also take note of references to particular planets and celestial bodies, as these are common themes you'll find in almost every belief system. In fact, it has been said that all religions can be traced back to astrotheology, the worship of celestial bodies as deities or association of deities with celestial bodies. This is a very broad topic in and of itself and is heavily involved in much occult knowledge. It's also important to understand how all these celestial bodies and deities are used to represent qualities of the human psyche. So without going too far into the subject, as we take a look at these various religious figures, try to look for how they may relate to qualities of the human psyche and how their stories may have helped others to better understand themselves. Angra Mainyu. Satan is said to have begun as the Zoroastrian devil figure of Angra Mainyu, later portrayed in Jewish Kabbalism. Zoroastrianism is an Iranian religion that is recognized as one of the world's oldest organized faiths. Angra Mainyu is the destructive spirit in the dualistic doctrine of Zoroastrianism, also known as Ahriman, meaning destructive spirit, and name of Zoroastrianism's underlying reality or substance of the destructive or evil spirit. Angra Mainyu is the main adversary of the Spenta Mainyu, the holy or creative spirits or mentality. His main epithet is Druj, which means lie. He is personified as an unstable, lazy, insecure, ignorant coward. The name of Angra Mainyu is said to be ancient. In an older book of work, Ahura Mazda, the creative spirit and polar opposite of Angra Mainyu, existed alongside Angra Mainyu for all eternity, and they were separated by a void. The world was said to have been created as a battlefield so Ahura Mazda could vanquish Angra Mainyu in a battle lasting 9,000 years. Angra Mainyu is assisted by a host of evil entities, the Devas and the Druj, which he created. Jay, the primeval woman, is his partner who helps to keep him motivated in his efforts. When Ahura finally triumphs over Angra, it is said Angra will be confined to hell. Dyauspitar. The Hindu god Dyauspitar, meaning Sky Father, is connected with Dyauspitar, the Roman god of the underworld. His association with the underworld may stop there, though in his story he is known for the rape of his own daughter and has been depicted as a bull, a symbol that will come up later. His predecessor is believed to be Dyauspitar, a Proto-Indo-European religion. Dyauspitar. Roman god of the underworld, also known as Rex Infernus, later subsumed by Pluto or Hades. His name was commonly shortened to Dis, which has also been used in the story of the abduction of Persephone. Dis has also been used as another name for the underworld or part of the underworld, originally a god of wealth. According to Julius Caesar, the Gauls considered him an ancestor, a belief handed down by the Druids, later associated with death in the underworld. When in the underworld, only oaths and curses could reach him, and he was invoked by striking the earth with the hands. Black sheep were sacrificed to him, and those who performed these sacrifices hid their faces. In 249 BC and 207 BC, the Roman Senate ordered festivals to appease him and his wife, Proserpina. Every 100 years, one was held in his name, and sacrifices were offered to his altar during the secular games Ludi Secularis or Ludi Tarentini. Both Odin, the Norse god, and Bacchus, the frenzy god, connected to Hades, are connected to the Allfather Dis, the king of the underworld. Notice how all three of these names, Dyauspitar, Dyauspitar, and Dyauspitar, are similar in structure to the name Jupiter. In fact, it is believed this line of gods is where the name Jupiter originated, The name of the god Zeus also shares its etymology with these gods, derived from the Proto-Indo-European root Diau, meaning to shine. Pluto, the Greek and Roman god, ruler of the underworld and the dead. He was previously Hades, a term which eventually came to simply refer to the underworld. Also associated with wealth, his brothers were Zeus and Poseidon, and he seemed to represent the more positive aspects of the underworld like abundance. He's also been called the Chthonic Zeus in religious practice, chthonic being a term used to refer to gods, rituals, and cults related to the underworld in ancient Greece. Also related to Summanus, the Roman god of nocturnal thunder, Februus, the Etruscan god of the underworld, Serapis, Pluto's Egyptian equivalent, and the Semitic god Muth or Mat, considered an equivalent of Thanatos and Pluto. He seems to have taken on a role more akin to what we know of as Satan by the Middle Ages. In Dante's Divine Comedy, he presides over the fourth circle of hell, where the greedy are condemned, where Dis is the citadel of lower hell. In the epic Jerusalem Delivered, he is invoked in the company of all ye devils that lie in deepest hell. Of note, particularly in reference to alchemy, an occult field of study, is also the fact that Pluto's derivative, plutonium, is considered the heaviest naturally occurring element. Hades, the Hidden One, the ancient Greek god of the underworld and the dead, was a name later used referring to the underworld. Described by Homer and Hesiod as pitiless, loathsome, and monstrous, he was portrayed as the dark and violent abductor of Persephone, who he made his wife, as opposed to Pluto, portrayed as her loving husband, although the details all seem to become convoluted. Pluton was one euphemism for Hades, described as the god most hateful to mortals, as it simply means giver of wealth. There are accounts of sacrificial practices in his honor, carried out at night where the victim's blood was left to absorb into the earth to reach him. He was the child of Kronos or Kronos, who would eat his children for fear they would take his throne. Hades, like his siblings, aside from Zeus, was swallowed by Kronos. Though he left the other realms alone and only focused on matters concerning the underworld, he could be very wrathful if someone crossed him in his own realm. Sabazios, or Sabazios, god of the Thracians and Phrygians, his name related to the Macedonian word saudoi or satyrs. According to some scholars, he was a Thracian mountain god whose cult was carried by Phrygian immigrants from Thrace to Anatolia. In Athens, the cult's initiation ceremonies took place at night, and adepts were purified by being rubbed by serpents. Often identified with Dionysus and later identified with Semitic god Bile, he was worshipped as early as the 4th century BCE. Notice the etymological connections with the word sábado, Spanish for Saturday, and Saturn. Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction. He represents darkness and is said to be the angry god. Although the act of destruction in Hinduism is not looked at as a negative thing, but rather a sort of recycling necessary in order for new creation to take place, Shiva could be considered opposite to Brahma, the god of creation. He is considered the most feared god in Hinduism and is heavily worshipped. It is said that the serpent race, despised and feared by all others, found favor with Shiva, who is depicted with the serpent god Vasuki around his neck and holding a trident. Shiva predates Vedic religion and evolved as a composite of different deities, including the storm god Rudra. Prehistoric depictions as early as 10,000 BCE have been attributed to Shiva, and the Pashupati seal, uncovered in the early 20th century, depicts a possible proto-Shiva figure. Shiva has also been connected with the Norse god Odin for various reasons, including the fact that they are both connected with the element Mercury. However, Shiva has also been connected to the god Saturn. Kali, the consort of Shiva. Despite her seemingly demonic appearance, at least in the eyes of most Westerners. She is generally considered a positive, protective deity, though Hindu religion does not necessarily make the distinction between good and evil that many other belief systems do. Kali is also depicted in many forms. When Kali steps out with her left foot holding her sword in her right hand, she becomes the Samhara Kali form, that of death and destruction, standing on a corpse and holding a freshly severed head with a plate to collect the blood. This is also said to be the origin of the term left-hand path, which is the main reason I chose to include her here. Left-hand path is a theme seen in many spiritual and occult practices, particularly Satanism. Caelus, the father of Saturn in Roman mythology. He is depicted on the cuirass of Augustus of Prima Porta, said to represent the new Saturnian golden age of Augustan ideology. He is connected to the cult Mithras, as well as Jupiter, which, as we know, is connected to Deiauspitar. Caelus has also been used as a representation for Yahweh in Judaism. Miclantecuhtli, god of the dead and king of the underworld in Aztec mythology, which is home to several gods and goddesses. Cannibalism was sometimes involved in his worship. Also known as Ixpuztec, Nextepuhua, and Zontemoc, he is associated with spiders, owls, and bats, and was the equivalent of the Mayan god Cimil, the Zapotec god Quito, and the Tarascan god Tihuimi. Cimil, one of many Mayan gods of death, he is the absence of light. He is chaos and disaster, but, much like the Hindu god Shiva, he is also associated with regeneration and new beginnings. Cimil is known by different names in different regions, however the meanings tend to stay the same throughout. Also associated with owls, he is closely linked to the Christian devil and tortures the souls of evil people in the underworld. He was called the Stinker, and a foul odor was attributed to him. The root of his name literally means flatulence or stench. He has been represented with the god of war in scenes of human sacrifice. I find this very telling, but we'll save that for another video. Pazuzu, the Assyrio-Babylonian god who, in the movie The Exorcist, possesses Regan McNeil. In mythology, he was considered the king of the wind demons, but like many other figures, he had both positive and negative aspects. Although he was considered both dangerous and destructive, he was also evoked for protection, and was said to be particularly protective of children and mothers. He was also associated with the plague, however was believed to offer protection from the plague. Pazuzu was the brother of Anki and son of Sumerian and Akkadian Hanbi or Hanpa, the king of demons in the underworld, god of evil and all evil forces, of whom little information is available. Marduk, the Babylonian god who eventually became king of the gods. He is astrologically linked to Jupiter, and also known by the title Bel Marduk, which is similar to Baal, as well as Belus or Belos, who has also been associated with Zeus. Santa. Yes, there was a god named Santa. No, not that one. Worshipped by Luwians and Hittites in the Bronze Age. Details about him seem to be uncertain, but he's been described as a warlike deity who could possibly be associated with plagues in the underworld. Baal, previously called Hadad. His name has been used as a generic term for God, and to polytheistic peoples became applicable to many different deities. The term has also been used as a sterner, less affectionate term for husband, as well as many other meanings like owner of a house, landholder, owner of cattle, lender, creditor, head of a family, conqueror of nations, a man of significant standing, etc. He was known as the god of rain or rider of the clouds, and also regarded as the god of weather, as well as the god of fertility. Baal is associated with the Philistine lord of the flies Beelzebub, also known as another name for the devil in the Christian faith. Although it is contested by some, The Baal of the Canaanite pantheon is said to have had relations with his sister Anat, his mother Asherah, and her daughter Pidre. Incest is also said to have been commonplace in ancient Near East pantheons. He has also been called the sun god, associated with the sun and Jupiter. He was considered the chief male deity of the Phoenicians, and throughout all Phoenician colonies traces of Baal worship are found. He was also worshipped by Moabites, their allies the Midianites, and the Syrian devil Rimmon, worshipped in Damascus. The Israelites worshipped him under the name Baal Peor. Children were said to have been sacrificed to Baal, and it is said the priests would dance during the sacrifice around the altar and cut themselves when prayers were not answered. He is also associated with Bile, Irish god of death, a Gaelic Goetic iteration of a much older Celtic god often referred to as Bel or Belinos. Now, if you think Baal sounds bad, have you heard this next one? Mot, the Canaanite god of the underworld, as well as the god of sterility and master of all barren places, basically anything that opposed life and fertility. He was also known to the people of Ugarit and in Phoenicia. In Ugaritic myth, Mot is a personification of death, said to be the son of El, living in a city named Myri, a pit as his throne and filth being the land of his heritage. This is Baal's address to Mot, that you not come near to divine death, lest he make you like a lamb in his mouth, and you both be carried away like a kid in the breach of his windpipe. It is said Baal is urging Mot to attend his feast and submit to him. Mot sends a message back, threatening to devour Baal himself. Later it is said that Mot does indeed slay Baal, or is tricked into believing that he did. The two were said to have engaged in a perpetual battle, where Baal was annually vanquished and slain. Anat, sister of Baal, however, would in turn slay Mot. Baal would be resurrected, and the cycle would repeat the following year. Note how this very likely relates to the movement of celestial bodies and changing of seasons. Bile, or Belinus, Belinos, Bel, Beli, Baal, or Baal. See how all these names end up being connected? This name has been associated with being a healing god as well as a god of death, depending on who you ask, and said to have a strong cult that stretched across northwestern Europe. The namesake of the Celtic feast day Beltane, a known occult holiday, it is also associated with Dyauspitar. Kemosh, the supreme deity of Moab, a Canaanite state. He is possibly associated with the bull, often used interchangeably with the god Molech, and has also been said to be the Moabite equivalent of Baal. Kemosh is identified with Astar, a variation on Atar, a Semitic deity of the planet Venus. He was believed to help his subjects in war or subjugate them in anger if displeased, and human sacrifice to Kemosh was considered necessary in critical situations. Enemy populations were killed in his name upon victory in war or directly sacrificed. Kronos, or Kronos, leader and youngest of the first generation of Titans, divine descendants of Gaia and Uranus, he overthrew his father and ruled the mythological Golden Age until being overthrown and imprisoned by his son Zeus. He is depicted with a scythe or sickle, which he used to castrate his father. Having been told that he would be overthrown by his own children, he devoured them all as soon as they were born, except for Zeus, who his wife Rhea birthed in secret. He has been identified with time and also with Kronos, the personification of time, and is also associated with Saturn. Saturn, god of time, who was eventually conflated with Kronos, he was celebrated during the Roman Saturnalia, with feasting, role reversals, free speech, gift-giving, and revelry. Sacrifices were performed in his name. He was also equated with Baal and connected to Dyauspitar. He can be traced to Egypt and appears connected to Sobek, also associated with Seb and Kronos, and also partnered with Lua, connected with plague and destruction. The word Saturday takes its name from Saturn. Sobek, Lord of the Four Corners, an Egyptian deity associated with the crocodile, pharaonic power, fertility, and military prowess. He also served as a protective deity. He devoured souls of the wicked and was often fused with the god Horus, eventually becoming a solar deity. Operating from pure reptilian instinct, he was both worshipped and feared. His worship involved the keeping of crocodiles and the mummification of crocodiles upon their deaths, as well as the mummification of their eggs. He has also been associated with Ra and Seth or Set. Seb or Geb or Keb, god of the earth who influenced the cosmos, the earth and the underworld. He was the father of Osiris, Isis, Seth, and Nephthys. Also said to be a divine king of Egypt, who the pharaohs were said to be direct descendants of in the underworld, sometimes depicted with green skin or even the head of a snake. He was also considered the father of snakes and has been associated with chaos. Sekhmet, an ancient Egyptian goddess whose name means she who is powerful or the one who loves Mat. She was the goddess of the hot desert sun, plague, chaos, war, and healing. Created by the sun god Ra as a weapon to destroy humans for their disobedience and not living in accordance with the principles of Mat, she was sometimes seen as the daughter of Seb and Nut, the earth and sky. Said to breathe fire, the hot winds of the desert were likened to her breath. It was said that after being sent by Ra to destroy humans in his name, her bloodlust was not satisfied and she went on a rampage which nearly destroyed humankind. She could be terrifying yet protective of her friends and would aid physicians and healers. To appease her, Egyptians would offer her food, drink, play music for her, and burn incense, as well as whisper prayers into the ears of mummified cats before offering them to her. She has been compared to the Hindu goddess Kali and has often been mistaken for other Egyptian goddesses, particularly Bastet, due to her feline-like appearance. Dionysus, called the god of wine, parties, and orgies, he has been compared to Lucifer and had a cult, festivals, and mystery schools in his name. His worship reportedly involved casting away of inhibitions and restrictions and included everything from orgies to mutilation, dismemberment, cannibalism, and sacrifice, though some of these activities are debated or may have been unique to the cults. Associated with satyrs, which bear a resemblance to Pan, the god by which Satan's common Western depiction is said to have been influenced. He is also said to have commanded an army of satyrs, as well as appearing as a satyr himself. Also associated with the bull and serpent, he has been compared to Bacchus, considered his Roman equivalent, and Sabazios, as well as others, including Hades, whom Heraclitus declared were one and the same. There is said to be a heavy involvement of death symbolism included in Dionysian worship. Lucifer, Latin meaning light bearer or light bringer, was a name for the planet Venus, also called the morning star or dawn bringer, before it was personified. Though the name came to be thought of as synonymous with the Christian devil or Satan, the two had very different origins. The well-known story of Lucifer being jealous or envious of God and wanting to take his throne, leading to him being cast down to earth or the underworld, has been interpreted in many different ways and is mirrored in other religions. One interpretation positioned Lucifer as the devil ruling in hell and Satan as his vassal. The story of Lucifer has also been said to have referred to the king of Babylon at that time, for which many identities have been proposed, including Nebuchadnezzar II, Nabonidus, Tiglath-Pileser, Sargon II, and Sennacherib, or even to be referring to the entire line of rulers. Lucifer has been associated with many other gods, including the Canaanite Atar, Dionysus, Proto-Indo-European Hausos, associated with Lucifera, daughter of the god Pluto, and Prometheus. In Gnosticism, he was identified with the creator deity of the Old Testament, and eventually became the Demiurge. Pan. Considered the ancestor of modern Satan depictions, he has been called the hidden god, and his name means all. He was a symbol of Saturn and often affiliated with sex, hence connected to fertility. He was depicted as a satyr, a half-man, half-goat, said to represent the animal instincts of man, though most commonly said to represent his connection to both nature and divinity. Although Pan was generally regarded as good-natured and playful, when angered he could be vicious, such as in the story of Echo, one of his many love interests. When she rejected him, he had his followers tear her apart. The term panic originated from his ability to instill sudden, irrational fear in others. The Demiurge. In Greek mythology, this was a lesser god said to have created the physical world. In Gnosticism, he was the creation of Sophia and created the physical world in which we live, all the while ignorant of Sophia, who imbued a spiritual spark into his creation. Gnostics believe that the Demiurge and Yahweh, the Hebrew God of the Old Testament, are one and the same, and that there is another supreme universal being who created all, called the Monad, an adaptation of themes from Greek philosophy. It also mirrors the story of Lucifer in being an opposing force who is cast down to the lower world, whether that be interpreted as the earth or the underworld. The Demiurge has gone by many other names such as Yaldabaoth, Samael, and Caelus. In the Pistis Sophia, Yaldabaoth is described much like the Christian devil, residing in chaos with his 49 demons, where he tortures evil souls in boiling rivers of pitch along with other punishments. It has also been said, at least in one iteration, that the Demiurge is also the maker of the devil and his angels, yet the devil is a spiritual being and able to see the spiritual world, whereas the Demiurge is not. Anubis. God of funerary rites, protector of graves, and guide to the underworld, he has been portrayed as a jackal, who as scavengers were strongly associated with cemeteries. Before Osiris, he was considered the most important god of the dead, depicted in black and said to symbolize regeneration, life, and fertility. He has also been connected with the god Hermes Trismegistus and portrayed as the deity Hermanubis, a composite of the two. Among his many epithets, perhaps the most unsettling are the one who eats his father and the dog who swallows millions. While there are a few qualities of Anubis that may relate to Satan in some way or other, he seems to have been generally viewed as a positive deity who served a more protective role rather than a destructive one. Summanus, the Roman god of nocturnal thunder, said to be one of Rome's oldest gods. He's been associated with Pluto, the chief god of the underworld. He has been called Jupiter's dark twin, representing nighttime thunder, whereas Jupiter represented daytime thunder. Both would receive animal sacrifices, and those offered to Summanus were black. At one time he is said to have been held in higher regard than Jupiter, before being strangely forgotten or phased out after the construction of a temple in Jupiter's name. Summanus has also been associated with hell by Portuguese poet Kemosh in this passage. If in Summanus's gloomy realm, severest punishment you now endure. Februus, ancient Italic god of purifications and Etruscan god of the underworld, riches and death. Similarly to Pluto or Dispater, he is also the origin of the month February. Manea or Mana, Etruscan and Roman goddess of the dead, spirits and chaos, and said to be the mother of ghosts, the undead, and other spirits of the night, as well as the Lares and the Manes, chthonic deities thought to represent the souls of deceased loved ones. In Greek mythology, she was the goddess of insanity and madness. There is speculation that in ancient times, Young boys were sacrificed to her in exchange for protection of the remaining family. Serapis. Pluto's Egyptian equivalent, Serapis was a syncretic deity, meaning a product of the blending of belief systems into a new system or incorporation of other beliefs into an existing religious tradition. In this case, he was derived from the Egyptian Osiris and bull god Apis, as well as Zeus and other Greek figures. He was depicted as Greek in appearance but with Egyptian trappings, and combining iconography from a great many cults. Serapis has been recognized as a sun god as well as a lord of healing and fertility, and is also said to be a symbol of the universal godhead among the Gnostics. Thanatos, the personification of death in Greek mythology, he is said to have no father, but is the son of Nyx, night, and brother of Hypnos, sleep. He seems to come from a pretty negative batch of siblings, including the personifications of old age, suffering, doom, deception, and blame, to name a few. Regarded as merciless and indiscriminate, he was hated by and hateful towards mortals and gods alike. He has also been used to specifically refer to peaceful death, and later on, it seems he came to be seen as an effigy, associated more with gentle passing. He has also been depicted as a winged boy similar to Cupid, and in many other forms. Azazel. In the Book of Enoch, a fallen angel who introduced humans to forbidden knowledge. Doesn't sound so bad. He may in fact be connected to the origin of the term scapegoat, where 2 male goats were chosen for sacrifice, but one was set free and sent into the wilderness for Azazel. In older versions of the Bible, the phrase La Azazel actually translates to as a scapegoat. He is said to have taught men the art of warfare and women the art of deception, and was one of the chief Grigori, a group of fallen angels who married women. The passage this refers to has also been equated with the Nephilim. Because of how Azazel has said to have corrupted man, he was bound hand and foot and cast into an opening in the desert, where he would remain in darkness until the day of judgment, when he would be cast into the fire. Azazel has been compared to Prometheus in that he imparted knowledge to humans that could be used for good but was later used for evil, and he has also been associated with the serpent and hell. Mara. The term Mara is used within Buddhism to simply represent a challenge along the path to enlightenment. Personified, Mara was a demon labeled the Destroyer or Tempter, a celestial king who tried to prevent Siddhartha from attaining enlightenment by tempting him through various means, including using his own daughters to seduce him. Mara's daughters represented many qualities considered to be counterproductive to enlightenment, including thirst, aversion, discontentment, desire, attachment, greed, and passion. In some accounts, he did not send his daughters to tempt Buddha, and they came willingly after his setback. Associated with death, rebirth, and desire, Mara is also said to be the guardian of passion and catalyst for lust, hesitation, and fear, and has been referred to as the one who delights in destruction. It has also been written that Mara eventually repented and converted to the Buddha's ways through an encounter with Upagupta, an advanced disciple of the Buddha. Molech or Moloch, possibly derived from the Hebrew melech, meaning king or to rule. The term can be traced back to Leviticus in the Bible. Molech was commonly thought of as a fire god and tutelary deity of the Ammonites, and essentially identical to the Moabitish god Kemosh. Although the name Molech is thought to represent a deity which the Canaanites offered sacrifices to in the form of a large bronze statue, it's unclear whether this term referred to an actual deity or the act of sacrifice itself. In the Old Testament, it reads, "Do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Molech," and "Any Israelite or any foreigner residing in Israel who sacrifices any of his children to Molech is to be put to death." Other names include Milku, Malkam, Melkomi, and the name is also thought to be connected to Milcom, national god of the Ammonites. Set, or Seth, Egyptian god of chaos, the desert, storms, disorder, violence, and foreigners. He was the jealous brother of Osiris who plotted to kill him and take over his throne. Tricking Osiris into laying inside a chest, he then sealed it with lead and sent it down the Nile River. When Osiris was found and freed by Isis, Set dismembered his body and scattered the pieces across Egypt. There are no doubt many more examples, but for the purposes of this video, I think you get the idea. Notice how we have common themes of the underworld, which seems to not always refer to anything subterranean, but in many cases just to the Earth in general, to planets like Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn, and the Sun, which is also associated with the element of fire. When you start to look into occult or esoteric knowledge, you see how all these things are connected to various human characteristics, both positive and negative. For example, fire can be used to represent both anger and courage. We also see many instances of a figure falling or rising, which is no doubt connected to astrotheology and the movement of celestial bodies. We'll get into a lot more of the symbolism we saw here in future videos. The next subjects I plan to explore will be ideologies, symbolism, and practices, as well as many of the secret societies that have existed throughout history. For now, remember that beliefs can be very limiting. If you have the idea that one field of study or other is inherently evil, you could miss much of the valuable knowledge gained there that could be used for good. After all, knowledge is only a tool, and it's your choice whether to use it for creative or destructive purposes. I hope if you're watching this, you lean toward the creative side, as we need as many people out there trying to do positive things as we can get. There's no question that there is evil in the world, but if we educate ourselves and work together for the benefit of all, we take away any power it has over us. I hope you've gained some value from this video and look forward to sharing more information in the next video to build on the foundation we've started here. I want to be clear that I am not an expert on any of these subjects by any means, and I'm only aggregating the information that I find through my own research. In fact, I'm already learning a great deal just by putting this information together. Perhaps by the end, we'll both have gained an even greater understanding on these topics and come away with new insight. So until next time, take care.